Hey everyone, welcome back to Strange Minds 6. I'm your host Ruby, and today we're going to be reading more of Chicken Soup for the Dog Lover's Soul, stories of canine companionship, comedy, and courage. Written by multiple authors, a few to name are Jack Canfield, Mark Victor Hansen, Marty Becker, DVM, Carol Klein, Amy D. Shoja, and many more. This video, we are going to be reading the story of My Blue-Eyed Boy and the Subway Dog. And we might be able to squeeze in another story called Dog and Mr. Evans, but I'm not promising that, just in case if the video does get a little bit long. I don't want it to get too long and then it throws everything off track. I want you guys to be able to enjoy the stories and just kind of like take a few moments of relaxation and distract the mind for a few. But without further ado, my dear friends, I want to ask if you guys can please hit that like button, hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. It would mean a great deal to me if you did. And without further ado, grab a snack, grab a drink, or sit back and relax. And let's get to it. My Blue-Eyed Boy. I think we are drawn to dogs because they are the uninhibited creatures we might be if we weren't certain we knew better. George Bird Evans. My dog Harry and I are very close. Harry, an 80-pound Dalmatian, listens to me when I am upset, comforts me when I am blue, and goes everywhere with me. He cares for no other person like he does for me, his beloved mama. Having raised him since he was an 8-week-old puppy, I feel the same way about him. He's my blue-eyed boy. One beautiful Sunday morning, Harry and I went to Central Park. Harry was running off the leash on Dog Hill, along with all the other city dogs, while their owners enjoyed a spring day in the park. I was feeling down because I had been recently laid off from the job I'd held for 10 years. Being in the park with Harry was one of the ways I forgot for a while that I was out of work and that my prospects were not looking good in a tough economy. I was standing at the bottom of Dog Hill talking to another dog owner when all of a sudden we heard someone shout, "He peed on my leg!" I turned to look, and lo and behold, at the top of the hill, I saw a lady gesticulating at my blue-eyed boy, who apparently was the culprit. Horrified, I rushed to the top of the hill. Harry had never done anything remotely like this before. When I got to where the woman was standing, I reached down quickly and grabbed hold of Harry's collar, in case he decided to do anything else untoward. The woman was bent over, trying to clean up her leg. She was pulling off her shoe because the pee had dribbled down her leg and all the way into her shoe. We straightened up at the same moment, and for a shocked instant, we looked at each other. "Alexandra?" she said. "Valerie?" It was my former boss, the one who laid me off 3 months before. I apologized to Valerie for Harry's behavior, but all the way home I laughed and gave Harry lots of kisses and hugs. Harry, of course, was thrilled that he clearly had pulled off a winning stunt, though fortunately he has never repeated his performance. To this day, when I think about all of Harry's wonderful qualities, his revenge for Mama still makes me laugh the hardest. Written by Alexandra Mandis. The Subway Dog. I was 20 years old and living away from home for the first time. For companionship, I had a dog named Buford, who, although gentle, weighed more than I did and had a mouthful of sharp teeth. I felt safe going anywhere with Buford at my side. In order to be free during the day, to enjoy walks in the park and other things I like to do, I took a job working the 4 to midnight shift in downtown Boston. The only downside of this arrangement was that I had to ride the T, the Boston subway, home from work late at night. As time passed, I discovered that keeping to oneself was an important survival mechanism. I avoided making eye contact and carried a book under my arm to read while I rode. One night I had finished work and was heading home. Every night I rode the Red Line from Park Street Station to Andrew, where I would get off and walk the 6 blocks home, knowing Buford was waiting patiently. That night was different. Park Street Station was a steep flight of stairs. Park Street Station has a steep flight of stairs leading down to the underground platforms. I was tired as I fumbled for a token to put in the turnstile. I knew I had one. I always did. I rummaged around from pocket to pocket, but found nothing. Oh man, I groaned. The station was quiet at the time. It was only 2 or 3 more trains scheduled before the T closed at 1 in the morning. I walked over to the collector's booth and pulled out $1. "1 token, please." People who rode the T often regard the token collectors inside the booths as only one step removed from ticket machines, so it was understandable that I wasn't paying attention to the man behind the booth's thick glass and metal bars, but he was paying attention to me. He slid the token and my change under the window. Then he spoke. "Hey, would you like a dog?" Startled, I looked at him, not sure I had heard him correctly. "Excuse me?" "Would you like a dog?" he repeated. He looked down, motioning with his chin. I leaned over, and it was only then that I saw the subject of his inquiry. Inside the booth was a dog, a very small type of terrier with lots of wild, weary hair. The dog appeared to be trembling, but looked at me as if to say, "Yeah, and what's your problem?" I was surprised, and as an animal lover, a little troubled. "Where'd he come from?" I asked. "He's a stray. He showed up about 8 o'clock. He's been here ever since." The big man picked up the dog and set him on the narrow counter, gently rubbing him behind the ears. "He has a collar but no tags. No one has come looking for him. My shift is almost over." The rational side knew that rescuing this little wanderer was noble, but totally impossible. I mean, what about Buford? The collector sensed a soft spot in me. I've asked every person who has come through here if they wanted a dog. No one would take him. What about you? I inquired. He smiled and laughed softly. Me? No, honey. My wife would kill me. I couldn't take my eyes off the dog. How in the world did he get here, and why was no one looking for this poor little guy? The collector made his final pitch. You know, if you don't take him, I'll have to let him go when I leave. I couldn't believe it. What do you mean you'll let him go? We're downtown. He'll get killed. He'll starve. He's so little. He explained that there was only a couple more trains scheduled to come before he closed. He couldn't leave the dog in the booth, and he couldn't bring him home. No one else had taken him. I, in other words, was this dog's last hope. I was wavering, and both the man and dog sensed it. Oh Lord, what was I going to do? We stared at each other for what seemed a very long time. Is it a male or a female? I sighed finally. He grinned. Female. I called her a him just 'cause it's easier, he explained hastily. I shook my head and added half-heartedly, but I don't have a leash. That's okay. I've got it all worked out. Here's a piece of twine. It's stronger than it looks. What stop are you getting off at? Andrew. Oh great, that's only 4 stops. You'll be fine. The twine will last until you get home. His face flushed with excitement. The collector unlocked the heavy door, stepped out of the booth, and without fanfare, handed me my new pet. Thank you so much, the guy said with a relief. I didn't want to let him loose upstairs. The dog and I looked at each other. Hey, you guys look good together. The man crowed. With that, he opened the gate and allowed me to pass without paying. Satisfied grin on his face, the dog and I walked to the next set of stairs that would take us down one more level, to the subway tracks. I spoke to my new friend in a soothing tone. It's okay. Everything's gonna be okay, I promise. The minute the collector told me that the dog was female, I had to decide on a name. Phyllis, after Phyllis Diller, the comedian with the wild, unkempt hair. It came to me immediately. Oh, Phyllis, I sighed. Wait till Buford gets a look at you. We descended the stairs, my new friend and I, stepping onto the dirty platform. Park Street Station is one of the biggest and busiest train stations in Boston. It is so big that it has 3 platforms instead of usual 2. One side leaves Boston heading towards Dorchester, and the other side goes farther into town and onto Cambridge and quirky Harvard Square. In the middle is an extra platform to accommodate the many riders who frequent the station. As if on cue, my fellow travelers all turned to look at Phyllis and me. Even the young man who played guitar, collecting coins in his open guitar case, stopped. All at once, the whole crowd broke into applause. Looking around, I didn't recognize the place. Most nights, people kept to themselves, like me, burying their noses in books. But not tonight. Tonight everyone was smiling and clapping, giving me a thumbs up and a right on. Phyllis began to bark, all bluster. A young couple, 2 tracks over on the far side to Cambridge, pointed and waved. Look, the girl gushed. She took the dog! She took the dog! Joined by the length of twine the collector had given me, Phyllis and I stood together, basking in the attention of the cheering crowd. It didn't matter that we were big city strangers in the middle of the night. For a brief moment, we were all joined in euphoria and camaraderie that only happy endings can bring. Elizabeth Lombard. Dog and Mr. Evans. "She's famous, you know," the elderly man said humbly, half looking at the floor while I examined his dog's swollen ear, but I could hear the pride in his voice. A few moments earlier, just before entering the exam room, I had glanced over the chart for the patient in the room 1. When I saw the patient's name, I thought, how original. A dog named Dog. Probably another backyard lawn ornament that's barely noticed and doesn't even get enough attention for someone to come up with an actual name for her. But then I also noticed she had been brought in for yearly exams and had received all our recommended vaccinations and preventative care. Perhaps this wasn't a neglected dog after all. Inside the exam room, I met Mr. James Evans, 84, and dog, his 11-year-old Weimaraner mix. I guess you could say they were pretty close to the same age. Mr. Evans had noticed the swelling and dirty ears, and brought Dog right in to have her checked out. As I continued the exam, he told me how he stumbled upon Dog's high intelligence when he started teaching her simple tasks. He taught her these mainly in case of an emergency, since he had had a heart attack and other health problems. He noticed how quickly she caught on and began teaching her more tricks. Her most famous were counting and solving math problems. They started showing off for family and friends. Then Mr. Evans began taking her to the nursing homes, schools, and other small groups to perform. The people seemed to enjoy it, he said. Everyone's always asking how she does it. I tell them I don't know. She hasn't told me yet, he laughed. Maybe she can read my mind. I don't know. But she gets the answers wrong when I'm not concentrating. When he first started telling me this, I thought, yeah, everybody thinks their dog is a genius. But I could now tell by the way his eyes lit up and how Dog never took her eyes off him that he wasn't boasting, but doing what he always did, sharing this special animal and her stories with others. He sensed that I was genuinely interested and told me he would bring a video of her next time. He readily agreed to my recommended pre-anesthetic blood testing and treatment of the ears. Mr. Evans brought me the videotape the next time he brought Dog in, which was for her annual visit. Later that day, a few members of the staff and I watched it. Although it wasn't the best quality tape, two things were evident: how much the small audiences enjoyed the performance and how Dog never took her eyes off her partner. Was she reading his mind? Or was she so adept at reading his body language that she was picking up on some subconscious cue he was giving her, something he didn't even know he was doing? And isn't that almost the same thing? However they did it, it was a result of both of them being completely in tune with and trusting each other. Several months later, they were back in the exam room, both a little feebler. Mr. Evans wanted me to check those ears again. He thought she might be losing her hearing. She was also having some trouble getting around, but so am I. He chuckled. As I carefully checked her over, her ears were fine. Just some wax, no infection, but her hips were arthritic. The next time I saw them, Dog had to be carried into the exam room. 2 years passed since our first meeting. She was now 13 and he was 86. I dreaded this exam. Before I even started, Mr. Evans looked straight at me with moist eyes and said, "Now, she's been too good to me for me to let her suffer. I would never let her down like that." With that, I went on quietly with my exam. She was so weak, laboring to breathe. Her heartbeat was muffled and her eyes were dim. He agreed to leave her overnight so we could do more tests. He wanted to take the time to find out everything, but didn't want to allow her to be uncomfortable any longer. If nothing could be done, I said I understood. X-rays, EKG, and blood work confirmed congestive heart failure, which had also caused liver disease. After treating her with heart medication, she was breathing a little easier and able to eat and drink. Something told me, though, that she was just holding on for him now. I prayed that she wouldn't die. Not that night, not without him beside her. I held my breath that morning as I entered the treatment room, trying to read my staff members' faces for the answers to the questions I didn't want to ask. How was Dog? Had she made it through the night? She was alive, but very weak. I had to call Mr. Evans. He seemed to already know what I had to report. Mr. Evans patted her head as I injected the bright pink liquid, tears streaming down my face, my hands shaking. I glanced at my assistant, hoping to find a steady face. No luck. Her eyes were pools of water. Dog's leg, my hands. The syringe were now nothing but a blur. She took one last deep, long breath. Mr. Evans' son, John, carried out the large box. For the first time, James Evans looked old to me. I wondered how he would be without her. Later that afternoon, John Evans called to let us know that his father had passed away. He had suffered a heart attack while Dog's grave was being dug. I couldn't believe the pain that hit my own heart. I don't know how long I stood stunned before taking another breath. I felt responsible. I had ended Dog's life, and because of that, Mr. Evans' life had ended too. But then I realized they wouldn't have wanted it any other way. The family knew this too. They had Dog's body exhumed and cremated, and they placed her ashes with her best friend. I am grateful to Dog and Mr. Evans. They did more for me as a vet than I did for them. For at those times when I feel discouraged, dealing with the aftermath of a person's neglect of a pet, I remember Dog and Mr. Evans, and my confidence in the bond is restored. Andrea B. Red, DVM. And with that, my dear friends, we are going to end this video. If any of you have any pets at home, I suggest just give them a warm, loving hug. Let them know how much you love them and care. 'cause I'm gonna do that with my two now. This has been Ruby, signing off.